You ever convince yourself that you're the sane one while the world burns around you? That was me, sitting at my parents' dinner table, chewing overcooked roast while my girlfriend, Adaline, radiant and smug, looked my mother in the eyes and said, "We are getting married." No warning, no whisper beforehand. Just a grenade dropped in the middle of mashed potatoes and polite small talk. My fork stopped midair. My mother gasped. My father blinked like someone slapped him across the soul. And me? I nodded, smiled even. Because when you're knee-deep in a lie someone else told, sometimes it's easier to drown in it than to stand up and scream. The truth was simpler and more ridiculous than any of them knew. There was no marriage. There was no us, not really. Just me, a guy too cowardly to walk away, and her, a woman who could cry on cue and lie like it was a second language. That night was the beginning, not of fatherhood, not of commitment, not of anything noble. It was the start of my personal circus, one where I was the clown, the ringmaster, and the caged animal all at once. You want to know how it all fell apart? I'll tell you. But first, you need to understand how far I let myself fall just to keep up the illusion that I was in control. Spoiler, I wasn't. I knew she was trouble. I met Adaline at a gas station. Not a bar, not a bookstore, not some curated dating app, but a rundown shell on Route 27, where dreams went to die and energy drinks were 2 for 1 if you smiled at the cashier. She was leaning against a beat-up Corolla, arguing with the air pump. Not about it, with it, cursing it out like it owed her money. I watched from across the lot, holding a bag of stale pretzels and a Gatorade, and something about the way she kicked the machine with her heel made me laugh. She turned, caught me watching, and flipped me off with the flair of a pageant queen. 10 minutes later, I was filling her tires. "I'm Liam," I said, because silence felt stupid. "I'm Adaline," she replied, chewing gum and watching me work like she was evaluating livestock. "You got nice hands for a nerd." I should have walked away then. But she had this way of making you feel like every boring thing you'd ever done could be rewritten if she said your name. Our first date was Wendy's. She ordered 3 spicy chicken sandwiches, dipped her fries in her Frosty, and told me about her childhood hamster who died in a vacuum cleaner accident. I laughed so hard I choked on my Sprite. The second date, she climbed out her bedroom window because she said doors were for the unimaginative. By the third, we were sleeping together. By the fourth, she had a drawer at my place and a toothbrush with pink glitter stuck next to mine. And somehow, it was good. Really good. She made everything electric. Grocery shopping felt like an adventure. We danced to elevator music in public bathrooms. We had sex in a blanket fort built from my engineering textbooks. She'd whisper things like, "You're not like the others," and I, the fool with a heart full of flattery, believed her. We'd binge-watch bad horror movies and scream louder than the sound effects. She'd steal my hoodies and call it borrowing indefinitely. I caught myself thinking, maybe this is what love feels like. And yeah, I saw the cracks. The flirty text from unknown numbers. The night she'd disappear and return with glitter on her thighs and a story about girls' night that never quite tracked. But I ignored it. Because when it was good, it was dizzyingly good. And I wanted to stay in the spin. We lived on takeout, late-night laughter, and lies I told myself. She'd climb into my lap, whisper wild plans about running away to Vegas, and I'd smile like I wasn't already losing pieces of myself. I wanted her to be real. That version of her, the sweet and chaotic dream girl who kissed my forehead and called me her safe place. But dreams don't last. Not when they're built on missing time and lipstick that doesn't belong to you. It started with a sock. Not mine. I found it behind the couch, black, ankle high, Nike, size too big to be hers, too unfamiliar to be mine. It was crusted with dust and resentment. I picked it up and turned it over like maybe, somehow, it would offer an explanation. Socks don't talk. But Adaline sure did. "Oh, that," she said, without even looking. "Probably yours." "It's not." "Then maybe it's yours from before," she added, like time travel was part of my laundry routine. "Seriously, babe, don't make a thing out of nothing." Thing is, I did. Silently. It planted itself in my mind like a weed. But I buried it. Like I buried everything else I didn't want to face. Because things were still good. Mostly. She was more affectionate than ever that week. Brought me coffee in bed. Sent me a voice memo of her humming some love song I didn't recognize. Said she dreamed about naming our kids Riot and Rebel, which I thought was unhinged but kind of charming. And then the second thing happened. I came home early. Again. Why do these things always happen when you come home early? She was in the kitchen, shirtless. Not naked, just shirtless, in that way that made it look casual, like shirts were optional now. Sitting on the counter was a guy I'd never seen before. Tattooed, bleach blonde, muscular in that Instagram PT kind of way. He had a bowl of cereal in one hand and my spoon in the other. I froze. Adaline just grinned. "Liam, you're home early," she chirped, like I was a damn UPS package. "Who's this?" I asked. "This is Kale," she said, as if that was supposed to clarify anything. "He's helping me with my posture." "Posture," I repeated, like an idiot, as if that would help the word make sense in this context. She nodded. "He's into spine alignment and fitness. He's a bone guy." I said nothing. I looked at Kale. He raised the spoon like a salute. "Yo." I didn't ask him to leave. I didn't scream. I just walked out, sat in my car for an hour, watched a squirrel dig through a discarded bag of Doritos and felt something inside me unravel. Later that night, she curled up next to me like nothing happened. Like Kale had been a figment of my overactive imagination. "Don't be jealous," she whispered. "I love you." And I let that sentence patch over the hole. I stayed. Why? Because when you're deep in it, logic doesn't matter. It's about comfort. It's about inertia. It's about lying to yourself more convincingly than she lies to you. I told myself, if she says she loves me, she must. I told myself, every couple has weird moments. I told myself, maybe Kale really is a chiropractor. But in my gut, I knew. The cracks had started. Hairline fractures along the porcelain surface of our sweet life. And I, ever the engineer, knew how things fail. It's never all at once. It's piece by piece. Subtle shifts. Until one day the whole structure collapses and you're left standing in the dust, wondering why you didn't reinforce the foundation. The day Adaline told me she was pregnant began with a fight about cucumbers. Not metaphorically. Actual cucumbers. I came home with groceries. Just the basics. Eggs, bread, milk, coffee, and one bag of cucumbers. I didn't think it was controversial. She stared at the green plastic bag like I'd walked in carrying live ammunition. "Why would you buy those?" she asked, squinting. I blinked. "Because we ran out?" She crossed her arms. "You don't buy cucumbers on a Tuesday, Liam. There are moments in life when you realize you've slipped into a different dimension. This was mine. I didn't know cucumbers had a schedule. They do if you're expecting," she said, eyes wide, voice suddenly soft like she was narrating an indie film. I stood there with the bag in my hand, not comprehending. Expecting what? That's when she gasped, an honest-to-God soap opera gasp, and backed away like I'd said something cruel. "You didn't feel it?" "Feel what? Adaline?" She looked around, like she was about to reveal a ghost. Then she leaned in, dropped her voice to a whisper, and said, "He told me." I wish I were making this up. I wish there was a way to explain this that made even the faintest whisper of sense. But there's not, because her eyes were dead serious when she said, "I had a dream last night. He came to me. The baby." I opened my mouth, closed it again. I wanted to ask so many questions. Was he wearing a name tag? Did he bring medical records? But I just stood there like a human error message. "He said he doesn't like cucumbers. He said his skin will be sensitive," she whispered. I dropped the bag. There was silence. Then she looked at me with what I can only describe as beatific insanity. "You're going to be a dad, Liam." I laughed. I actually laughed. Because what else do you do when your girlfriend announces her pregnancy based on a dream visitation from a fetus with cucumber preferences? But she didn't laugh with me. She touched her stomach with reverence and said, "I knew you wouldn't believe. You're too logical. You've always struggled with spiritual things." I went to bed that night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had derailed so efficiently. And in the morning, it got worse. Because by then, She had told my mother. Not over the phone. Not by text. No, no. She showed up at my parents' house with gluten-free muffins and a sonogram printed off Pinterest. My mother called me in hysterics. "You're going to be a father, Liam. We're so happy." I could hear my father in the background muttering something about baby monitors and canceling the wine subscription. Adaline got home that night with a look of glowing martyrdom and prenatal brochures she must have picked up at the pharmacy just to commit to the bit. "I did it for us," she said, curling up beside me like a python. "This is real now. Don't ruin it." And here's the thing. I knew it wasn't real. Not just because we hadn't had sex in weeks, not just because she occasionally forgot which month she was supposedly in, but because she started calling the baby Forrest. We didn't discuss the name. It just appeared, like everything else with Adaline. "Forrest doesn't like when you play loud music," she told me one night. "Forrest thinks your shampoo is too chemically. Forrest says you have commitment issues." I almost started talking to Forrest myself, just to keep my grip on sanity. And yet, I didn't call her out. Not yet. Because some part of me, the dumb, broken, codependent part, wanted to see how far she'd go. What her endgame was. How deep the rabbit hole of madness could go. The cucumbers were only the beginning. And I had a feeling that if I waited long enough, something, the truth, maybe, would surface. It did. But not how I expected. Not when I was ready. Because the real revelation, the one that shattered the illusion completely, came from a voicemail that wasn't for me and wasn't even about her. But we'll get there. There's a particular kind of dread that comes with hearing your girlfriend's phone ring at 2:13 a.m. It's a quiet time. A time reserved for sleep, or anxiety, or regret. And on this particular night, all three were present. Her phone buzzed once. Then again. Then a voicemail pinged in. Adaline was asleep beside me, mouth open slightly, snoring like a chainsaw muffled by silk. I watched the phone light up, casting a soft glow across her face. She didn't stir. And then I did something I hadn't done before. I looked. Not because I didn't trust her. I didn't, but not in the paranoid, possessive way. I looked because I felt like the universe was finally giving me a breadcrumb. A tiny, glowing breadcrumb wrapped in an iPhone lock screen. I didn't guess the passcode. I didn't need to. She'd left it open earlier, probably distracted while posting one of her bump selfies to a private group that, for all I knew, was just her and 4 burner accounts hyping her up. I tapped the voicemail icon. I wish I hadn't. It started with laughter. Male. Maybe 2 guys. Muffled music in the background. Some bass-heavy track. Vulgar lyrics, low-budget house party vibes. Then a voice, nasal, slurred, grinning. "Yo, tell your girl Forrest said thanks for last night." A pause. Then more laughter. Crude, long, wheezing laughter like someone had just chugged tequila and remembered a private joke. "Oh, and she left her sock again. The black one. You know, the lucky one. The sock." I froze. Not because of what he said. Not even because of what it implied. I froze because he called the baby Forrest. The imaginary baby. The one she had named. And then it hit me all at once. This crushing, absurd, godless realization. She wasn't pretending to be pregnant to trap me. She was pretending to be pregnant with someone else's imaginary baby and telling them about it too. There wasn't one lie. There was a network of lies. A full-blown delusional ecosystem where she'd planted a forest and harvested chaos like it was a seasonal fruit. She was telling him, whoever he was, that Forrest existed, that there was a future, and telling me the same thing. Forrest wasn't a baby. Forrest was a weapon, a story, a performance, and we were just 2 suckers in the audience clapping for different acts of the same show. I looked at her sleeping, peaceful, like none of it mattered. Like she hadn't just stitched together a false life across 2 men, maybe more, with the same damn name as a tree. My chest felt tight. Not dramatic heartbreak tight. Just the slow, choking realization that I had officially lost control of my own life. That I wasn't even in a relationship. I was in a psychological art installation. I didn't wake her. I didn't scream or cry or throw the phone. I sat there, numb, listening to the voicemail again and again, rewinding it like it would make more sense the fifth time around. And in that quiet room, it became very, very clear. This wasn't about love anymore. This was about survival. The next morning, my mother brought over a casserole. She called it celebration food, which was just an insulting name for something that looked like it had been assembled during a blackout and cooked in guilt. I thought you two might like a home-cooked meal, she said, patting Adeline's stomach like it was a puppy. You need to nourish that little miracle. Adeline beamed. She had the audacity, the sheer, uncut confidence, to wink at me while holding the dish like the Virgin Mary with a lasagna. Forrest's hungry, she said. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. My parents had fully committed to the fantasy. They were obsessed. My father, who once cried when I told him I wanted to major in philosophy, was now printing out prenatal nutrition charts from WebMD and taping them to my fridge. My mom was knitting. Knitting. They had ordered a crib. They had painted a spare room. My father installed blackout curtains for nap times that would never come. And I did nothing. I couldn't. Because the second I tried to speak even a sliver of truth, Adeline would morph into a victim so convincingly, I started to doubt my own sanity. Once, I pulled my mom aside. I said, I don't think she's actually pregnant. She looked at me like I'd confessed to kicking a priest. Liam, she whispered, voice trembling, don't you dare doubt that girl. She's carrying your child. She's carrying something, I muttered. It just might be lies. But Adeline had already covered that base. She had told my parents that I was struggling with the emotional transition into fatherhood, that I was scared, detached, resistant. She'd spun it as a trauma response, my trauma. Be patient with him, she told them. He has deep-seated fears about family. He's never processed what happened when he was 12. Which, what? Nothing happened when I was 12. I had a B-plus average and a brief obsession with ants. That's it. But she weaponized nothing. She turned thin air into backstory. And they ate it up. I became a character in her fiction. And she was directing the whole show. I wasn't just trapped in the relationship. I was now trapped in the performance of the ideal boyfriend, the reluctant but loving father-to-be. To leave her would be to abandon my child, to break my promise, to confirm the fake damage she had already claimed I carried. And so I stayed. I stayed through the gender reveal green cupcakes, Forrest is neutral. I stayed through the prenatal yoga classes where I had to pretend to breathe deeply while she whispered things to her stomach like, You'll never be like him, Forrest. You'll be better. I stayed through the baby registry filled with items she had no intention of buying. It was just a performance prop, a resume of maternal ambition. But I didn't sleep. I didn't eat right. I stopped going to work some days. And when I did, I walked around like a man who had been abducted and returned slightly off. And still, I didn't tell anyone the full truth. Because how do you explain a lie this elaborate? How do you confess that you stayed because the lie became your prison? 2. It wasn't about love anymore. It wasn't even about fear. It was about momentum. I was locked in, a passenger in a vehicle I couldn't afford to crash. And then, one night, it all broke. But not because of me. Because someone else knocked at our door with a bag of cucumber peels, 2 positive pregnancy tests, and a claim that made Adeline's entire house of cards begin to tremble. It was a Tuesday night. Always a Tuesday for some reason. Like the universe wanted my unraveling to feel like a weekly sitcom. I had just gotten out of the shower when I heard the knocking. Not polite knocking. Not neighbor returning mail knocking. This was the kind of knocking that came with purpose. With wrath. I threw on a shirt. Barefoot, wet hair dripping, I opened the door. She was standing there in sweats and eyeliner like war paint, clutching a reusable grocery bag full of cucumber peels. Her left hand held 2 pregnancy tests, positive, the double pink lines like tiny daggers. Her right hand clutched a phone with a cracked screen and a picture open that I couldn't quite make out, but I'd soon wish I never had. I need to talk to Adaline, she said, eyes blazing. But Adaline had already heard. She came around the corner with that fake smile she used when trying to appear angelic, The one that always looked like she was suppressing the urge to bite someone. "Oh, you," she said. No question, no confusion, like they'd rehearsed this moment in a fever dream. The woman stepped forward. "You told him you were pregnant." Adaline didn't flinch. So, the woman laughed like she was losing oxygen. "You also told him the baby's name is Forrest." And that's when it hit me again, that nauseating, slow-motion slap of realization. Forrest wasn't just our imaginary baby. Forrest had been repurposed, recycled. She was using the same name with a different guy, and not just telling him he was the father. She had told this woman's boyfriend the same bedtime fairy tale she'd spun for me. I watched them stare each other down in my hallway. Two women bonded by rage, betrayal, and a man named Corey, who, until that moment, I hadn't realized even existed. "He thinks you're 5 months along," the woman said, voice shaking. "But I've been with him for 4 years. I'm actually pregnant. And now he doesn't believe me, because you came prancing in with your stomach pillows and fake ultrasound printed off the internet." She slammed the phone into my chest. The picture was blurry, but the message thread was all there. "Corey, can't believe we're going to have a forest green heart." "Adaline, he's already talking to me. He told me he wants to be a painter." "Corey, do you think he'll have your eyes?" My jaw dropped. I wanted to laugh, cry, set something on fire. Adaline crossed her arms. "You're not really pregnant. You're just jealous he believed me." "I have 2 tests in my hand," the woman growled. "So," Adaline said flatly, "those things are like mood rings. You probably peed wrong." That was the moment everything imploded. The woman lunged. I caught her elbow midair. Adaline ducked behind me, holding her stomach like she was protecting a real baby. The irony would have been poetic if it weren't so disgusting. "Liam, tell her I'm telling the truth," Adaline hissed behind me. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I heard the voicemail. From Corey. He thanked you. For last night." She blinked. Something cracked in her, just slightly. But she still didn't panic. That's the worst part. She pivoted. "Oh," she said, tilting her head. "So now you care about the truth?" And just like that, she made me the problem. The other woman, still heaving, turned to me with wild eyes. "You're with her." "I was," I muttered. "I think. I don't even know what this is anymore." There was silence. A long, terrible silence. Then the woman took one of the pregnancy tests and threw it across the room. It hit a framed picture of Adaline and me at the pumpkin patch. The glass shattered. I didn't flinch. "I hope you both rot," she spat. And then she left. I closed the door behind her, slow and hollow. Adaline leaned against the wall, serene. "She's so emotional," she said softly, like we just watched a soap opera together. I stared at her. "You told him Forrest was his." She smiled like a child caught sneaking candy. "I tell people what they need to hear. The truth doesn't come out in the daylight with tea and conversation. No, it crawls out at 20:41 p.m., cracked and bleeding, when there's no one around to stop it and too much silence to ignore it." I said it without thinking. Maybe I wanted to hurt her. Maybe I wanted to finally make her feel something real. "You're a lying bitch." It landed like a slap. She was standing in the kitchen, barefoot, holding a spoon and eating peanut butter out of the jar like it was a coping mechanism. Her face froze. Not shocked, not offended, just still. And then she laughed. A short, breathless laugh that didn't belong in her throat. "Finally," she said, licking the spoon clean. "You said it." I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The air was already thick with everything I should have said months ago. She leaned against the counter like we were old friends swapping secrets. "Do you want to know?" she asked, eyes wide now, her voice sugary and low. "Do you really want to know?" "Know what?" She tilted her head. "How many?" And then she started talking. And I didn't stop her. Because I couldn't. Because I was no longer in control of this narrative. I never had been. "Elliot. Remember him? The guy from the gym. You thought we were just friends." She made finger quotes in the air. "We weren't." She walked past me, into the living room, barefoot like this was some kind of guided tour through her betrayal. "Chris. The one with the boat." We didn't just go sailing. I slept with him in the cabin while you were texting me good night. She smiled like she was reminiscing about vacation photos. Oh, and Marcus. That one was messy. He cried afterward. Told me he felt guilty because he liked you. Isn't that adorable? I just stared at her. But she kept going. Forrest was Corey's imaginary kid. Yes. But that night I told you I was at my cousin's baby shower? I was actually in a motel with him. He brought Gatorade and prenatal vitamins. We watched a documentary about whales after. I sat down because my legs didn't feel like legs anymore. She stood over me now, her silhouette lit by the kitchen light like some deranged confessor from a pulp novel. There were more, she said. If I'm being honest, it was addicting. The performance, the attention, the lies. And they all believed me. You believed me. She laughed again, not cruelly, not even joyfully, just freely, as if truth had been burning holes in her chest and finally escaped. You're not the victim, Liam, she said softly, crouching in front of me. You chose this. Every time you looked away, every time you swallowed doubt and called it love, I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap the air or rip up the couch or call someone who could tell me this was a dream. Instead, I whispered, why? Her smile faded. Her eyes softened just for a second. Because, she said, you were easy to lie to. She stood, walked to the fridge, opened it, stared blankly at a half-eaten yogurt cup, and then closed it again. Then she said something so absurd, so grotesquely her, I almost laughed. We should still do the baby shower, though. Your mom already ordered the balloons. The crib is still in the guest room. My dad built it himself. Took him 5 hours, 3 beers, and a minor argument with the instruction manual. He was so proud, kept saying things like solid pine, and this thing will last generations. Now it collects dust. One of the legs is crooked. I never fixed it. The blackout curtains are still up too. It's always dark in there. Every time I walk past that door, I get a glimpse of what might have been, if what might have been had ever actually been anything. The lie wasn't just Adaline's. That's what I've had to choke down in the quiet aftermath. She built it, yes, but I lived in it, decorated it, invited my parents into it. I sat at the table and said grace over dinners soaked in deception. After her confession, after she admitted to every man, every betrayal, every manipulation like she was listing ingredients, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just left the room. And the next day, she was gone. No note. No text. Just the empty peanut butter jar on the counter and a half-burned candle that smelled like fake vanilla and denial. My parents didn't take it well. At first, they thought I'd scared her off. Maybe she ran because you pressured her, my mother whispered, as if she hadn't been one of the loudest believers in the lie. My father stayed quiet, but the disappointment radiated off him like static. But then the truth trickled out. Not all of it. Adaline never gave a full accounting. She just vanished like fog after dawn. But people talk. Corey's girlfriend told her friends. Elliot posted a cryptic quote about betrayal on Instagram. Eventually, the web unraveled. My parents went from defenders to something close to ashamed. They tried to apologize. We just wanted to believe the best, my mom said, eyes rimmed red. I nodded. What was there to say? I haven't heard from Adaline since. Last I heard, she was in a different city, dating a DJ who thinks she's a crystal healer. She's probably telling him she's pregnant with twins. Maybe she's named them River and Sky. I still catch myself wondering if anything she said was real, if any part of the Adaline I loved actually existed, or if I was just a blank canvas she painted on until the story got boring. The worst part? I still miss her sometimes. Not the lies, not the chaos, just the version of her I believed in. But belief is a dangerous thing when you give it to the wrong person. It blinds you. It binds you. And when the truth comes, it doesn't set you free. It leaves you in an empty room with a crooked crib, wondering how much of your life was lived in someone else's fiction, and if you ever really made it out.